Folks, episode 3 of Workspace After Work. I'm your host, Troy Edwards, and I am thrilled to be joined today by a friend and peer in both Google Workspace and golf, Mr. Tony Majewski. How you doing?
Troy, we're having a lovely Tuesday evening. Very excited to be a part of this. Honored that you reached out to include me in this magical little journey you've started over here.
Yeah, of course. Well, this isn't our first time recording together. Tony and I have worked together here in Canada with Google Workspace customers and on co-marketed events, and one of them being a Future of Work webinar that we did for Western Canada a little while back now, but we've stayed in touch and learned a little bit about each other over a drink in Chicago at one point. And it's been great working with you for the last couple of years. Maybe for the listeners, Tony, it'd be great to open up with an introduction of yourself and what you do at Google. And maybe you could sneak in a little bit of that aha moment of when you knew Google Workspace was something that made sense to you and you might be passionate about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm still upset at northeastern weather keeping us from playing golf together in Toronto last summer. That one still lives in my head, lives with me. But Tony Majewski, I am a workspace go-to-market strategist. So I work within the North American workspace practice, small but mighty team, and help our workspace specialists and our sales folks on the cloud side really figure out the most effective ways where we can add value to organizations through workspace, through joint solutions with ISVs, through joint solutions with Google Cloud, industry-specific value that we're able to bring organizations, line of business, really, ultimately, where can we help accelerate work? Where can we help accelerate outcomes? Where can we help people improve productivity, collaboration, security? And it's an amazing job. I'm super fortunate to be able to do this every day. I'm very excited about it at all times. I enjoy talking about it, which you and I both, I think we both are guilty of that. In terms of aha moments, I've been with Google for almost 2 years now. I was in a Google startup prior, so I've been in this ecosystem for a while, and it constantly hits me with aha moments, which I think is fantastic, that pace of innovation. But I go back to one that I think is probably pretty obvious for a lot of people my age and around my age is education system, right? I was using, I think, Zoho for a time in college. And then when I got access to Google Docs, it was a game changer and obviously never looked back. And then, moving into the professional career and going to companies that were using alternative platforms and VPNs and things like that. And then going back to what is now Workspace, the artist formerly known as G Suite, for the last 7 years, and not having to deal with a lot of those, let's call them micro frustrations and hurdles. There's no looking back for me. And one during the pandemic in particular, which is when I was hired at Google, starting remote, not meeting anyone in person, when we released Meet in Editors. That was, I think, one of the more fun aha moments, because for the first time since being remote, it felt like I was in a room working with people on stuff, whether it was slides, whether it was sheets, whether it was docs, being able to bring the connectivity to where the collaboration was happening and moving away from passive collaboration to active collaboration. To me, that was a complete game changer. And it just is such a practical way to bring the platform closer together for me. And again, they keep pushing new features and functions. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. This is amazing. Like the meeting notes and the Gmail draft smart chips, like it just never stops.
Yeah. I think there's been some big announcements that we should chat about in regards to AI this week, but just talking about the pace of innovation, Google's had AI worked into Workspace for years at this point, and it's almost hard to keep up with the amount of updates that come out for Google Workspace and the pace of development, that rapid innovation. That's thanks for the comprehensive intro and answer to the aha moment with Workspace. I think you're right. I am continually surprised and my passion is continually fueled to talk about Workspace at all times. Annoy my wife and friends with how much I talk about work, probably, and that's why I've got to start a podcast about it and invite you on so we can have these conversations and not get ridiculed. But yeah, we're overdue to get out on the golf course together. You might notice if you're watching this on YouTube, Tony's wearing Abandoned Trails piece of a merch, and I've got a random golf club hat on. We're both sucked in. We're addicted to golf as well as work. So hopefully we'll be seeing you this summer. The golf season up here in Toronto, as you know, is about 4 minutes long. So we gotta try and schedule something in at some point. But I do have a feeling that outside of booking a round of golf in, we'll be seeing each other in person this year. Big announcement around Google Cloud Next coming back to in person later in the year. Any thoughts, any anticipations for that event? 15,000 people in person again?
I am extremely excited to get back in person for Next. So in my previous company that I was with, AODocs, I got the opportunity to go a couple years, and it was incredible, right? You've got such an unbelievable atmosphere around all the different announcements, and you've got all the partners there. You've obviously got all the different events. You get to hear customer stories. You get to interact and network with, a global community of people that are excited about what Google Cloud can offer. And there's typically no shortage of excuses to, some partners are shuttling buses up to Napa, which is never a bad idea. There's golf in the area. So, who knows, might be, get out there for a couple days early or a couple days late and go down to Half Moon Bay or something, or do Harding Park. But it's, I'm ecstatic about that being back in person. And then there's always the mystery and intrigue of who's going to be the musical act, right? So.
Yeah, fair enough. I've never been to one. Been working with Google Cloud now for the better part of 3 years, and haven't had the chance to attend an in-person event of this magnitude, and I'm fired up. I know that StrataPrime will have a presence there. I hope that I get the opportunity to go down with the team from my partner. It's exciting times that the world is actually getting back to normal in some regards in this sense, but obviously staying abnormal in many. I would say another announcement that we need to cover is Sundar's message from the CEO, the press release around Google's AI developments. And is it Bard? Am I saying that correctly?
I believe so. I'm still trying to do internal research of the correct pronunciation and the origin of the name. I think you've got some Celtic backgrounds around, a storyteller. I also think that Bard was the person in The Hobbit that killed Smaug. So maybe people in the comments can either confirm or correct me on if that is correct. So
yes,
we have to figure out who developed the name and where the background is. Probably the former probably makes a little bit more sense, but you never know.
I think so, yeah. I mean, storyteller makes sense in reading about the technology and the way that it's being released at this point, or being used at this point, in terms of the search application and being, a research assistant, essentially. I can only think of how many ways this would benefit us in a professional setting, in terms of integrating with Workspace tools. I'm sure we'll see some of that be released over the next little while. I won't pester you to share anything if you know anything, but the eye roll. But yeah, really exciting advancements there, and I think well anticipated as well in response to Microsoft's moves in that space over the last little while, and great to see Google scheduling an event to share even more knowledge and more news about their developments. What are the details around that event, Tony? Is it tomorrow, the 8th, or is it the 9th this week?
I believe it's tomorrow, the 8th. I'm very excited to see what's going to be announced, personally. I've gotten a chance to use Bard internally in its current iteration, and it's been, very impressive to be able to utilize. I've had multiple practical uses for it in terms of preparing for meetings and understanding, quickly gathering different priorities for executive audiences that we're getting ready to present to. So it's really helped me kind of get to a final state in a lot of different projects I've been working on just through, asking it questions, seeing the results. So I'm really curious to see how Google is looking at applying that technology to what we do from a search perspective, to see how it plays a role in Workspace as a platform. I mean, I don't know if you remember from Google Next, but Aparna, during the Workspace keynote, highlighted some of the generative art of the possible around like building out a promo for a new sneaker that was getting released, and essentially, the magic behind potentially what Workspace will be able to do down the road, and putting together that presentation almost magically, however we want to consider that, right? So I think there's so much that we're able to do to build on what you mentioned earlier around the practical ways that intelligence has played a role in Workspace just as we know it today, for accelerating outcomes, removing those micro frustrations, but also creating a more equitable and inclusive environment. It's, really kind of the sky's the limit, I think, especially because this is what I think Google does extremely well around, data and artificial intelligence, and what we've been able to accomplish on kind of those large language models, and the updates that we've seen on Chinchilla AI and how that's all going to come together. It's really exciting, right? So I'm going to be glued to that broadcast, and seeing what's coming down the pipe for sure.
Yeah, it's worth noting for our listeners and viewers that we are currently recording this February 7th in the evening. The event will be on the 8th, and then this episode actually will be posted on the 9th. So, Tony, we'll have to finish the conversation and reflection in the comments maybe, and along with the viewers on this one. And if you've tuned into the event and you've got some perspective or something to share, please add that in the comments below as well. All comments are welcome. Yeah, exciting developments all around. Amidst kind of tough news close to home for me here in Canada, I know, the Google layoffs, the news of those layoffs hit a couple weeks ago in the US, but a lot of other markets were left waiting and wondering who was going to stay and who was going to go as part of that 6% reduction. And this week, we'd be remiss to not mention that Canada experienced a reduction in force at Google. And if anyone's listening that was affected by that, our heart goes out to you. I was actually caught up in a riff at SADA in November, and know what that's like to go get surprised by that sort of thing. And can't imagine how it was, to be honest, for Googlers who knew that there would be something coming, but not knowing if it was them or not. Tony, obviously thankful that you made it through that motion. It's tough for everyone involved, even those who make it through, right?
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult. I happen to know a lot of people that I work extremely closely with were impacted by this, and some of the most talented and smartest and hardworking folks that I've worked with, which I think is, it's common across Google that's, the people that are kind of making this machine go in the directions that it goes in. So it's been extremely tough to kind of go through the aftermath of all of this and seeing who was impacted by it. And, I don't think there's scenarios where really anyone deserved what happened. And that's, that's difficult, right? The one thing that I will say is, out of this, there's so many incredibly talented people that can come help organizations that are looking for top talent right now, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're, another established tech company, whether you're a startup that's looking for people that can help you be disruptive. Again, there's this massive, massive influx of some of the best people that you could ever want to bring into your organization right now. And, I'm trying to stay as close as possible with people that have been impacted that I worked with, because many of them I consider great friends, and I hope nothing for the best of them, and I hope they land in places where we get to continue to work together, because I really mean that. Some of the best people that I've ever worked with. So it's been tough. I feel fortunate, but it's something you never want to see happen to people that you work with and you care about. It's been a rough couple of weeks for sure.
Yeah, super emotional when you pour yourself into work, as we both do, and most of the folks at Google and in the partner ecosystem do, and it's been one positive that I have seen come out of it, and maybe this is a spin, because I know if you're going through it right now, it's hard to see the positive, but the community that it has created for me when I was laid off at SADA, there was immediately like a family of ex-Sadians that swooped me up and supported me, and people who still work there as well. I think the feeling of like, the network supporting you coming out of that has been tremendous. And on the ex-Googler side, reading about the Slack channel of ex-Googlers that was 9,000 members one day, and then a week later, over 19,000, and sharing ideas with each other, having some time to maybe reflect on what they want to do with their future and what direction they want to go in. This could be a really innovative and interesting time to see what new ideas come out of this community as well, right? Like you said, lots of talented and super driven and intelligent individuals that are entering a new stage of their career, a new direction. It's going to be really, really fun to watch what comes out of it, on the other side of this. Thanks for touching on that. I know it's a bit of a touchy subject for all of us right now, and it's not easy. If you are going through a job search right now, and there's any way I can help, please reach out on LinkedIn. Tony, I know you open up to that as well. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Let's shift gears. So I know one thing that you love talking about, as you alluded to in regards to work, is the future of work and looking forward, and how Google Workspace can help companies, individuals transform what they're doing every day into a more efficient process. Maybe you could share a little bit more with our listeners and viewers about that work that you do and why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coming out of the pandemic and hopefully returning to some level of normalcy, this has been even going back through when we were remote, this idea of the future of work, return to office strategies, hybrid strategies, has probably been the number one topic that I personally have engaged with executives in, whether it's an EBC, whether it's a one-on-one meeting, understanding Google's point of view on these things, what we're doing from a strategy perspective, how we're supporting it, how technology plays a kind of a very critical role in all of this. It was interesting to kind of lean into that subject matter, as well as someone that was essentially brand new to the organization, who was onboarded during the pandemic, to I think it was a learning example of how technology and culture and people play a critical role in that, and kind of having the best of breed of those areas to be able to go out and find information and have access to leadership across different product areas, to then go have an educated conversation with customers and people that have no relationship with Google on these topics. And I think some of the most interesting things that kind of came to fruition out of kind of transitioning to this idea of the finite moment of return to office, which we learned was more of a moving target than anything else. We're going to be back in September. No, we're not. We're going to be back in February. Okay, maybe we won't. And the idea that, the real conversation shifted to this idea of the employee experience. And if you're able to kind of decouple it from a specific piece of hardware or a specific network requirement or a VPN requirement or a time and a place, that's when you've really solved for this. And I think you've kind of, removed as much, technical and cultural debt that you might have that typically will slow down individuals and teams and organizations from running as fast as they can and being innovative and being disruptive and getting to outcomes faster. I constantly talk to organizations about, how important it is to break your muscle memory in how you operate and how your workflows are. And are you in a position to consistently kind of reinvent your workflows and be in a constant state of innovation and transformation and really adopt the pace of innovation that I think our organization runs at? And, I think Workspace is a great example of this and how many features we're constantly rolling out. And I think it's faster than some Googlers can keep up with, to be honest with you. And, every now and then I'll show a new feature, a new smart chip in Smart Canvas, and I'll have a colleague, and it's like, whoa, like where'd that come from? This is awesome. Whether it's meeting notes or Gmail draft and being able to bring that straight over to Gmail and send an email. So that's been a massive topic, and it's been really interesting to talk to organizations that have embraced the fact that over the last 2 years, they put a lot of reactive strategies in place that were successful, right? Not to take anything away from what they're doing, but they've also come back and said, okay, well, we put things in place, but we're not necessarily 100% certain that this is going to be the strategy that's going to bring us the success that we want moving forward. That's going to allow us to run as fast as possible. That's going to give us a security posture that gives us full confidence in the way that we operate and mitigating or eliminating categories of threats. So we've seen organizations that have a relationship with us, that don't have a relationship with us, that are coming to hear about what alternative points of view look like, right? And, as someone that's been in this platform for 7+ years in the professional world, in the enterprise world, I think I take a lot of it for granted in the way that I operate constantly changes. And, there is no traditional order of operations or rigidity that you see with a lot of legacy or competitive models. And this topic has come up with a handful of companies recently. You think about workflows, you think about processes, you think about the request to get something built, what that backlog looks like, and then when it finally gets delivered, have the requirements already changed? And then what does that process look like to iterate? What does that process look like to potentially rebuild whatever that process and that business requirement was? So, there are ways to do things that kind of go against the traditional way of thinking in terms of, enterprise workflow. And I completely understand why they exist, because I come from that background of document management, content services, enterprise workflow, governance, et cetera. They exist to mitigate risk. They exist to get more organizational data, but you don't necessarily need that rigidity in a lot of cases, right? I think we're an organization that takes these things very seriously. I've worked with a lot of organizations that use Workspace that have to take these things seriously, and they're able to kind of adopt this model where they are embracing that pace of innovation. They're not reliant on Patch Tuesday. They're not reliant on this backlog of application requests and things like that, and they're able to scale and be disruptive and kind of break that legacy muscle memory constantly, and embrace that transformation. And I think that's, if you look at the companies that have adopted Workspace and have been very successful with it, it's because they did it for those reasons. They were looking for that catalyst. They were looking to break away from, in some cases, 20, 30+ years of the way that they thought they needed to work. I think there's, as a self-professed document management nerd, I got this joke from a former coworker, Craig. He said, the best document management system ever built was Exchange, right? That's where, everyone stores their files, et cetera, et cetera. That's where you find things, right? So it's, we have these conversations around what does a unified platform look like that organically breaks down silos versus a competitive model that organically essentially creates silos.
Produces them, yeah.
Yeah. I think, we also talk about the changing, demographics of the workforce. The CHRO has become, I think, really integral in making technology decisions because of how important hiring and retention is these days, right? And technology plays a critical role, especially if you're taking a talent-first model. If we want to bring the best people in, regardless of where they're at, you have to have technology that supports that. And, knowing that you've got a tenured workforce that has in most cases worked a specific way for 10, 20 years. And they've got a primary pane of glass and order of operations that they've become accustomed to. But then you have people entering the workforce that are primarily used to mobile. They're primarily used to voice, video, chat. So how do you meet all those user communities and those personas where they're at without creating silos, right? And this is a problem that a lot of organizations are trying to solve, specifically around what does modern knowledge management look like? How does search play a role in all of this, right? How do you create governance models and security models that accommodate these different areas without slowing down collaboration or without having to compromise on certain things? It's, you and I have worked together and been in meetings together to know that this conversation could probably go on for another 6.5 hours just on this topic, right?
Yeah.
But it's been, I'm fortunate to be able to have these conversations because it's extremely interesting to me and thought-provoking to get organizations' feedback on this that are global, that are regional, that are in manufacturing, that are healthcare, that are retail. There's so many different nuances that exist in terms of meeting these different organizations and their user communities where they're at. Because not everyone is ready to work like a digital native 100% tomorrow, right?
Right.
So
that's the reality, right? Is there's a massive spectrum of companies out there, and where they're at in their journey is what could be wildly different from each other. And it's about, providing a tool in Google Workspace that is flexible, that is secure, and allows people to, adopt it in different ways depending on where they're at in their journey. There's ways to innovate and modernize process across Google Workspace. It just depends on what your appetite is to take on that innovation and transformation. I think about AppSheet as a perfect example for the traditional industry, of a way of modernizing paper processes and, extending that value of Google Workspace in terms of managing your users to processes that are currently unmanaged and have blind spots in your organization. There's a ton of value to be unlocked. And you're right. That's a conversation that we could go well over my my episode time limit of 30 minutes on.
Absolutely.
Maybe we could close with a couple of your favorite updates that you've seen this year. We've talked a lot about the pace of innovation, and that certainly doesn't slow down in 2023. We've talked about a couple on the show already. What do you have your eyes on? What are you most excited about, Tony?
So, there's a laundry list of stuff that's been released in the last 12 plus months that have just been incredible. I already mentioned kind of meeting editors. I think Smart Canvas is such an amazing concept and kind of paradigm shift away from what has been traditional word processing, to quote my dear friend Sandy Jones, Canadian CE.
Love Sandy. Shout out to Sandy if he's listening.
Shout out to Sandy. The concept of smart chips, the way that I explained it to some people, it goes back to, I think, a common question that we get from people around Excel is, all the hotkeys and people that pride themselves on not being able to use a spreadsheet without using their mouse, right? And, theoretically, you can now do that with Smart Canvas and being able to make all the different formatting changes and references with the @ symbol. But you have a connected platform, right? And with that comes all of your organizational data and people and context. And, when I talk about organically breaking down silos, I think this concept of smart chips is such a great example of this, right? Being able to leverage the @ symbol, being able to immediately attach it to a meeting that's scheduled, bringing in all the people that are a part of that meeting, and then preloading that template of what that meeting needs to look like. And then, being able to turn that into actionable, tasks. Being able to then look at what we launched at Google Next around integrated third-party smart chips. So bringing line of business data, because, in a perfect world, there are no silos, but we don't live in a perfect world, and silos will always exist because there's HRMS, there's CRM, there's, ticketing systems, et cetera. So how do you break that down? And this is a great example of that, right? Having those third-party smart chips brings that outside data in. So now you're able to reference people, dates, times, places, content, and now third-party data when we talk about disrupting those, the rigidity of certain workflows, this is a great example of that, right? And I think organizations that lean in, they're going to understand that this, this idea of this collaborative space has now become essentially a digital application. So I'm very excited to see where this is going to continue to go. I also think that our product team, leaning into this all-in-one concept, not only for the platform itself, because we've seen, the Gmail interface get consolidated to have Spaces, Chat, Meet, all integrated. You've got your sidebar with your add-ons. You've obviously got integrated search. But looking at what that all-in-one means from the third-party integration side, right? And, we announced interoperability with Cisco hardware previously last year. We announced interoperability with Zoom Room hardware in October. So understanding that, not necessarily all organizations are going to be all in with certain SaaS providers, and meeting those organizations where they're at becomes hypercritical because, being able to accommodate those investments, especially in the economic climate that we're in right now, becomes very important, right? And I think with what we've done with Workspace and being able to lean into that and show that, this is what best-in-class interoperability looks like, and we will meet you where you're at, is, I think, something that a lot of organizations are probably looking for in a partner. So our ability to execute on that and continue to lean into that third-party interoperability, I think, is absolutely a game changer. And one last thing, because you mentioned the pace of innovation and kind of change management, and I think that's one of the things that we talk about, and keeping up with our own pace of innovation and the change management is a constant, right? You're always there. It's not just migrate, change management, you're done, everything's great, because you're always going to be hiring new people. There won't always be 100% familiarity. We're always releasing hundreds of features a year. But I do think that comes up, I think, far too often around a reason why you wouldn't do something like this. And I'm incredibly biased in this opinion, but I think change management is the exact reason why you do something like this, right? I think more organizations, need to embrace the fact that change management represents a significant investment in the future of your organization. And it is incredibly important to sit there and consider that we may need to break that muscle memory. We may need to consider that we do have technical and cultural debt, and there is a better, more modern way of doing things, whether it's from a productivity and collaboration perspective, whether it's a security perspective. There's a lot of opportunity out there. There's always the threat of me going to the gym at work, right? And I think one of the things that you learn about when you're working out is you don't always do the same workout over and over again. It's important to kind of disrupt, the way that your body is anticipating things so you see transformation. I haven't been to the gym in I don't know how long, so I need to take my own advice here. But that's what I think more organizations need to kind of lean in to understand. What does the business need? What have they been doing? Where are their opportunities for optimization and improvement? And then how can we support that with technology? But technology that doesn't get in the way, technology that almost feels invisible and accelerates those outcomes. That's something that's been on my mind a lot, and we've been, I think, having this conversation with more folks at work a lot more recently. But yeah, it's I think that's how you kind of support what we're doing from an update perspective in the product and the platform is embrace it, right? This pace of innovation is a massively valuable thing.
And I think you're right in the sense that it is a bit of a scary concept for organizations to think about and take on, and it is an undertaking, that change management cycle, especially the first one, the big move, the big migration from one set of tools to another. Obviously that's, you're teeing me up perfectly here, Tony. That's where a Google Cloud partner can come in and really hold your hand through that change and that migration, and continue to support you to understand how to take advantage of all of the innovation and updates that are released for Google Workspace after you've migrated to the tool. It's not over after that initial change. You're constantly having to train and enable your users to get the best out of the tools. That's why you go with a solution like Workspace that is on the cutting edge of innovation, because you want to move at that pace. So a partner can really help with that. And I have to give a quick shout out before I wrap the episode here to StrataPrime and how positive they've been with me starting my own project of WorkspaceAfterWork, the show. They've been nothing but supportive as far as helping me get this going and allowing me some freedom to record on my own. So Penny, Andrew, Paul, I know you know Tony, and you're probably listening to this right now. So thanks so much for the freedom to be doing this. It's a lot of fun. Tony, I had a blast, man. We're gonna have to have you back on soon because, like we said, we could have talked for hours probably about this subject matter. So, and you know, there will be more updates to chat about next month. I'm sure we could do this all over again. Would you come back?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really appreciate you having me. This was fantastic. I don't think I'll ever say no to participating in this, and echo all your thoughts about your StrataPrime crew. Great team to work with. I obviously spend a lot of time with the Canadian team up there in the cloud and the workspace side, and with all the partners. And you know, one day maybe dual citizenship. Who knows? For all the time we
Love
spend.
that. Love that. Well, until the next time. I appreciate it, my friend. And for those listening and viewing on YouTube, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more of this content, come back next week for another episode of Workspace After Work. Subscribe, hit the notifications. You know what to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy. Cheers.